He looked out his window, surveying his kingdom. He was the rightful heir, the king of Israel, like his father David. In his young age, God had blessed Solomon with extraordinary wisdom, a wisdom used to grow his kingdom in strength and in wealth. He used his resources to build the temple of the Lord, a magnificent structure that would be the central location for his people to worship their God. In the generations to come, the people would make pilgrimages to worship at the house of the Lord that Solomon built. Families and caravans would travel to this glorious temple. They would sing songs written by his father, by the chief choir directors, even songs that he composed. They would sing them as they ascended the city gates and up the steps to the temple. But Solomon looked out at all he had achieved, and he wondered if there was any purpose behind it. And he would go on to write, meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. After all he had done, all his hard work and all his striving, he looks back at his life and declares, everything is meaningless. Something happened to this wide-eyed king. Was it the naivety of his youth, or the worthless pursuit of things of the earth that left him feeling bitter and alone? He had received a word from the Lord that his nation was going to be ripped apart. His family would only retain a small portion. There had been a promise to his father David, a blessing given to him by the Almighty that said, I will set one of your offspring on your throne. Their sons will also sit on your throne forever. Was this the Lord breaking his word? Was he reneging on the promises? Did he decide he no longer wanted to bless the house of David? Solomon knew that wasn't true. He knew that this was sort of his fault. He remembered fully what the Lord said. He said, I will set one of your offspring on your throne. If your sons keep my commands and my decrees, I will teach them. Their sons will also sit on your throne forever. Solomon did not keep his end of the covenant. Now, the nation of Israel was being ripped apart. It started out as notoriety. He became known for his incredible wisdom, a gift given to him by the Lord. People would come from all over the country for a ruling from the king. He would issue decrees with wisdom and justice. The hand of the Lord was certainly upon him. Soon, the news of his wisdom spread to other lands. Caravans of dignitaries would be pouring into Jerusalem. In the beginning, Solomon kept his ego in check, giving thanks to the Lord for his mighty wisdom. But then she came. The Queen of Sheba was beautiful, intelligent, wealthy, deadly combination for our king. She came with camels and spice and gold and precious stones. The Bible says that she came to Solomon and spoke to him about everything that's on his mind. And so Solomon answered her questions. Nothing was too difficult for the king to explain to her. She was drawn to him because of his immense wisdom. He was drawn to her. It says that she gave the king 4.5 tons of gold, great quantities of spices and precious stones, and he gave the Queen of Sheba her every desire, whatever she asked. The Queen of Sheba, with her beauty and bounty, was only the beginning. He'd gotten a taste for something and began to gorge himself on beautiful women, boundless treasures. The Bible tells us that King Solomon loved many foreign women from the nations from which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them. They must not intermarry with you, because they will turn your heart away, follow their gods. It says Solomon had 700 wives who were princesses and 300 who were concubines. A lot of women. But these women turned turned his heart away from the Lord and began to follow other gods. Even worse, he began to turn his own people astray. He began to set up shrines and temples and to foreign gods, turning their hearts away toward the God of Israel. And eventually it caught up with him, as he knew it would. This worthless pursuit, this fruitless search for meaning, wealth, wanting, wisdom, working, proven vain. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. All this striving and conniving, all the whining and dining, all the feigning and straining, all the earning and learning is all futile. In his grand opus on life, Solomon wrote, entitled Ecclesiastes, he writes this: when I surveyed all that my hand had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So now he's nearing the end of his life. All that he'd worked for is about to be stripped away from him. After ignoring praise and the Lord for so long, his kingdom is being divided and given to his servant, not his son. And yet, out of respect, God the Father allows Solomon's one son, Rehoboam, to rule over a tribe of Israel. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. It's all in vain. In vain, he got up early. In vain, he stayed up late, working hard for what? All his toil in life was completely meaningless. Do you ever feel that way? That you've been trapped in some sort of rat race, that everything you do, everything you work for, everything you strive for just feels meaningless, utterly meaningless. I was in my early 20s when I moved out to Hollywood. My dream was to be the next Jim Henson or Frank Oz. I spent my final semester at a film school program, and I'd gotten a job at a local animation studio, Rich Animation. My boss, Richard Rich, that was his name. Richard Rich had directed some films for Disney, The Fox and the Hound, and The Black Cauldron. And then he went out on his own and started his own company. They directed The Swan Princess. And then by the time I joined the team, we were wrapping up Swan Princess 2 and working on Swan Princess 3. I'm sure you've seen all of that, right? And I was thrilled though to have this full-time job working in the movie business. Excited to see how this would launch my career. I spent my days making sure that the film was moving forward, bugging animators to get their work done, helping move scenes from one stage of production to the next. It was incredible. It was great to be a part of something, to see an animated feature come to life. But eventually my perspective changed. Maybe it's because our next project was the animated King and I. Now, maybe you're familiar with that Yul Brynner, Deborah Kerr musical, or some of you might be familiar with the Jodie Foster, Chow Yun-fat dramatic telling of the King of Siam, the English school teacher who's come to teach his children about the ways of the West. Well, the animated version was a pale imitation. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. This is how I felt. All the hard work, the toil, the striving seemed to be a part of this rat race. Getting up, making my way to the studio in order to help others create essentially just a cash grab felt meaningless. Why am I working so hard to help make a film feels so pointless? But on the flip side, I was spending my nights and weekends doing something that really filled me with purpose. I was a volunteer at our church's youth program, teaching Sunday school, helping with the youth group, leading a small group, spending my time with students and their families. This is what really filled my life with purpose. It was during that time I heard God's call in my life to ministry. Like Solomon, I had been seeking the things that I thought would bring me notoriety and wealth. wanting to build a name for myself. It all is meaningless. This morning, we're continuing our pilgrimage with the people of Israel as they make their way to the house of the Lord. The people, they make their way to Jerusalem singing these songs of ascent, songs of hope and joy, peace, songs of help, trust, and witness. And today, we join with them in singing Psalm 127, a song of meaning, a song which declares, unless the Lord builds the house, its builders labor over it in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays alert in vain. Ironically, this song was actually written by Solomon, the same one who said, meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Solomon had spent the end of his life kind of looking over what he'd done and writing Ecclesiastes for 12 chapters, talking about how his wealth was meaningless, how these women were all in vain, how his notoriety was pointless, and his wisdom was for naught. And as he wraps up this book, he comes to this conclusion. He says, here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. The king of Israel, gifted with tremendous wisdom, comes to this conclusion in life that everything seems meaningless, but your best option is to obey and honor God, who is the ultimate judge. Feels like his conclusion should be followed up with that sad trombone. Womp, womp. So what are we to do with today's psalm? What are we to gain from Psalm 127? How can it ring true in our lives and enhance our worship of the Almighty? Is it a psalm that's just hopeful wishes of a man who's been beaten down by the rat race of life? Is it someone trying to put a positive spin on his tired existence? Is he attempting to put meaning into what feels like a meaningless reality? Is Solomon just shifting his blame of regret so that his end of his life will offer something more? Why would Solomon declare, unless the Lord is in vain? Eugene Peterson, in his book, A Long Obedience in Sane Direction, gives us this. It says, Psalm 127 insists on a perspective in which our effort is at the periphery and God's work is at the center. If we are to find any meaning and purpose in our lives, all the striving and toiling, all the working and watching, then it needs to be centered in and around God. When we sing Psalm 127, the song of meaning, we discover our meaning is for God, our purpose is for God, our worth is in God. God is the center of all. Out of that center comes our meaning, our purpose, and our worth. Matthew Henry, he writes this: in singing this song, we must have our eyes up unto God for success in all our undertakings, and a blessing upon all our comforts and enjoyment, because every creature is that which he makes, is to be and no one. Solomon begins this psalm by declaring that our meaning is from God. Unless the Lord that work in our striving is in vain. And then to support his argument, he offers two examples. Two examples that the people of Israel would be able to relate to: building a house or watching over a city. For those who were originally sang this song, they would understand that these metaphors aren't just a blue-collar construction job or a security post. It's not that he's saying something like, unless the Lord lays the pipes, the plumber plunges the vein, or unless the programmer develops the code, the web designer builds the website in vain. Because the imagery here is deeper than that. It's the imagery of building a house is not just a construction project. is really referring to establishing like a family or a dynasty or a legacy. In other words, if you want your life to have meaning, if you want to have leave a legacy, then you must entrust your life over to God. Our meaning is not found in the things we try to build by hand. Our stories are not written by what we do. Our labor in life is vain apart from God. This doesn't mean that we quit our jobs or our jobs that are, or have to find a job that fulfills our spiritual calling. Not every job that we have is going to give us that meaning. We may find ourselves in jobs we don't find particularly rewarding. Or we may find ourselves working in something that truly we think will fulfill us, but neither a menial job or a significant career can offer us what we truly need. Our meaning is found in the Lord. Unless we allow God to be the center of our lives, then all we can do is all we are watching over, all the things that we gain or lose are in vain. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. So what are you working for? What are you watching over? What do you expect to bring meaning to your life? Are you working for a quiet retirement or a pleasurable vacation? Are you wanting to build a name for yourself? Are you wanting to have a legacy built on your accomplishments? When we join in with God's people singing Psalm 127, we're inviting God's song to transform our perception. The Song of Meaning invites us to discover that our meaning does not come from our work, but from joining God in His work. Allow the Song of Meaning to fill your soul, unless the Lord builds the house. Allow the Song of Meaning to correct your perspective. Its builders labor over it in vain. Allow the Song of Meaning to reshape how you view your life, unless the Lord watches over the city. Allow the Song of Meaning to remind you your true purpose. The watchman stays alert in vain. When we sing Psalm 127, we realize that the purpose many of us strive for doesn't satisfy. Solomon writes, "In vain you get up early and stay up late, working hard to have enough food." We work hard to give our lives purpose. We work at a job, putting in above and beyond 9 to 5. We apply ourselves to our talents, crafting new projects, new music, new art forms, new ways of expressing ourselves. We dedicate ourselves to a cause or a candidate that we really want to support. And in and of themselves, these things are not bad at all. There's nothing wrong with putting our time and energy into working to support our families. There's nothing wrong with creatively expressing ourselves. There's nothing wrong about caring for a cause that's going to make the world better. These things are commendable gifts from the Lord, but they're not our purpose. Organizing our lives in such a way that they become our sole purpose leaves us in trivial existence. When we pursue a purpose through continually striving and getting up early, staying up late, working hard, it won't satisfy it. And eventually we discover it's all in vain. Psalm 127 helps us discover that our purpose is for God. All our restless toil, we discover, in all our restless toil, to discover our purpose outside of God is in vain. In singing the Song of Meaning, we surrender our frivolous lives, our frivolous pursuits, to something greater. The psalmist says that the Lord gives sleep to the ones he loves. The psalmist is letting us know that we don't need to continue to look for purpose. It's right there in front of us. When we discover that our purpose is for God, we find that we find what we really need, not more toil, not more rest, but rest. Rest from working too much, rest from trying too hard, rest from striving to make something of ourselves. Now, I'll be honest, this idea challenges me because I like to work hard to build a reputation for myself, trudging along so people will see the value that I bring, thinking that there's a purpose for all this hard work, that I'll get up early and I'll stay up late, taking care of my family, being a shepherd to our congregation, preparing sermons, writing small group curriculum, taking time to rest. Sometimes feels like a frivolous pursuit. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy vegging out at the end of the day, letting my eyes glaze over and watch TV, but that's not the rest that we're looking at. The rest that Jesus offers Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened. I will give you rest. Take my yoke and learn from me, for I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light." Much like Solomon is addressing, Jesus is saying that the true purpose is found in him. It's not found in all the things that make us weary and burdened. Those things will leave us exhausted, burned out. When you come to Jesus, you find a new purpose, your true purpose. A purpose that doesn't leave you exhausted but refreshed. That Jesus gives your spirit rest, your human search for purpose offers you rest for your soul. Now, as we move on in the psalm, I'm going to admit that this final section can kind of be difficult. The last 3 verses, the psalmist uses a metaphor of offspring to help uncover that our worth is from God. He says that like arrows in the hands of a warrior are the sons born in man's youth. Happy is the man who is filled with quiver. I can imagine those who are unable to have children might find this passage difficult. Those who've only chosen to have a few kids might feel slighted. Even those of us who have that small quiver full might not see that they're truly a blessing. I don't believe that Solomon is saying that our worth is found in the number of children that we have. God's not expecting us, desiring us, requiring us to have as many children as possible. And our worth is only found in our ability to reproduce. Eugene Peterson helps us understand what the psalmist might actually be getting at. He writes this: Jesus did not procreate children, yet by his love, he made all sons and daughters. People are the center of Christian work. The character of our work is shaped not by accomplishments or possessions, but in the birth of relationships. We invest our energy in people. Among those, we will develop as sons, daughters, sisters, and brothers, even as the Lord did with us. What is it that gives our life worth? Well, Psalm 127 helps us discover that it's through relationship. Authentic, life-giving relationships. Relationships that spur us to grow. Relationships that allow us to encourage others. Relationships found in marriage, family, and friends. We discover our worth in God through a quiver full of people that challenge us, that support us, that help us make it through each day. By being a community with God's people, growing together in faith and friendship, cultivating relationships with God, each other, we discover our meaning, God, our purpose for God, and our worth in God. Solomon, for all his wealth and women, must have been lonely at the time of writing Ecclesiastes. He spends his time looking for meaning, purpose, worth. But they had all these what seemed like meaningless relationships. I can't imagine they had a deeply intimate and personal relationship with one of his 700 wives and 300 concubines. With 1,000 women, we're told that he only had one son. That's all we know about it. To be honest, It must be almost impossible for a king to have authentic relationships. Quote the great philosopher Forrest Gump, must be hard being king. Meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor over in vain. This leads me to one final thought. For the past year, we've been repeating this phrase over and over again, and probably sick of hearing it. But building meaning through Christian community. That's the heart of Psalm 127. We at Bar Mills Community Church are joining with God as He's building meaning through Christian community in and through our congregation. This is not simply a cute little statement, cleverly crafted to give us warm fuzzies. For us, we discover our meaning, our purpose, birth as part of the people of God in our part of the world. We are the house of the Lord, the living stones built together to be God's church here in Buxton and our surrounding communities. Our purpose is for each of us to discover the deep meaning of Christian discipleship and to help others come to find that meaning in their lives. Because unless the Lord builds their house, their labor is in vain. What we discover as we ascend to the house of the Lord each week is that we cannot do this on our own. We need each other. We all need Christian community. We all need each other. Or we will find that all that we've worked for in life, all that we've been watching over, all that we've been relentlessly striving for is meaningless. The Israelites would journey to the temple. They would lift their voices together and sing these songs of ascent. In this time of communal worship, they discovered God, a loving God that offers them true meaning, purpose, worth. Unfortunately, this week, one of our members came to me and told me that she was wanting to lead a small group, but no one had come. She invited people to join her, but no one came. And that breaks my heart because she's prepared and created a place where people could build meaning through Christian community. Right? Because that's what our small groups are about. Our small groups are a place where you can engage with what God is teaching our congregation to help you wrestle with these passages more than I can expound to you. Our small groups are a place where these songs of ascent, where we take these songs of ascent and discover how God is calling each of us to respond. People also talk about growing our church, getting younger families, having more people, or constructing additional structure. But unless the Lord builds the house, we will be laboring in vain. If we are a church that to be building meaning through Christian community, we need to be actively engaging in our relationship with God and each other, coming together, not just on Sunday mornings, but throughout the week to wrestle with what God is teaching us and to pray for what God has for our church so that we won't be laboring in vain, but be building meaning Christian community. Unless the Lord builds a house, its builders labor over it in vain. Unless the Lord watches over a city, the watchman stays alert in vain. In vain, you get up early, stay up late, working hard to have enough food. Yes, he gives sleep to the ones who love. Sons are indeed a heritage from the Lord, offspring of the Lord. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are the sons of the man's youth. Happy is the man who is filled with quiver with them. They will never be put to shame. They speak with their enemies. Amen.